This is The Other Pass, and today we're talking to James Sauter.
The plate of food that was given to people as like, oh, this is your reality, making that creature dance in one big collective, it wasn't gonna die, which was nice. Sometimes when a festival ends, it feels like the dream's over. And then I go to the next one, and then it's like waking right back up in the same exact dream.
James is involved in the production of transformational festivals, best known of which is Burning Man. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. This subculture is extremely misunderstood and undervalued, and here we discuss its history, its future, and its present. Hopefully this will open more than a few eyes. So, I've never been to a festival, and I'm sure lots of other people have not been to festivals either. Can you give us an idea of what one is essentially like?
Maybe a good place to start is just opening up the idea of what a festival is. There's in our culture, we're surrounded by music festivals and these transformational festivals and art festivals and film festivals and yada 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 festivals. I would say in some way, if you've been a human on this planet, as much of an introvert or as isolated as you are, I feel everyone can relate in some capacity with what a festival is. And it's a gathering or basically a celebration, and like you understand the nature or the feeling of that. So if you can relate with that very real human desire to celebrate life or celebrate a specific thing or whatever, it's like then you kind of got, I think, the heart of what a festival is.
Sure, but I mean, like a music festival could be like a day and you go home and then you come back for the second day, whereas like a transformational festival, which is kind of what we're talking about, is like multi-day and you're out in the wilderness or something. Am I wrong?
I mean, I would say it really depends on who you are, where you're from, and where you're from, I don't just mean that physically, I mean like where you're coming from, where you're at emotionally, where you're at mentally, what you want out of that kind of event, or that kind of, what your intentions are kind of going there. The beauty about these, gigantic gatherings, actually they don't even need to be big, but the beauty about these gatherings is that, you really make the experience what it is. So much money and time and energy can collectively be put forward to put on a wonderful event, a highly intentional event. But ultimately, for the individual entering one of these spaces, it's they're perfect where they're at, and that experience is going to be unique no matter if it's your first one or your 100th one. I say this a lot to people who tell me it's like their first festival, and it's, yes, same here. Because honestly, if you go in there with beginner mind, and it's that's more realistic, because every experience, the human species is at a different point every single time that one of these things happens. And the collective experience is shifting very, very fluidly. So when we gather in these ways, we're mourning together new things. We're celebrating new things. We're witnessing new spectacles or new technologies or new paradigms of thought or belief or this or that all come and bubble to the surface of humanity. So that's constantly shifting, constantly evolving. Or, you could look at it just in terms of, oh, it's a bunch of dirty hippies getting together in a field and, dancing.
First way is a little more romantic. I think you're totally right. Any event is what you bring to it, and you leave with what you experience yourself. So it's almost like a point for your experience more than it is like a set experience.
Yeah, I mean, we can, as in production, we can create containers and try to set intentions for what kind of experience, festival goers want to have, or what we want them to have, but it's beyond that. In transformational festival culture, everyone's a participant. It's a co-creative habitat. So it's people, we more than anything are inviting people to step into their own creative power and prowess. And even when they don't believe that they have any, it's there's an invitation to actually renegotiate that belief. And actually that's where the transformation comes. That's the journey of discovery in that. On the same note, It's going to be like, how open you are to receive it. If you believe that this gathering or that gathering is just a bunch of dirty hippies gathering together in a field, that might be the extent of your experience if you go to one. 5 feet away from you, there could be somebody who just got over mourning, like really had a breakthrough in mourning the loss of their best friend in a car accident through dancing all night, or might have discovered a new herb that they can bring back to their grandmother who's like, sick of this or that, or might have just like seen a new piece of art that inspires this. I mean, the list goes on. Or even just tried like a new food they've never had before that's like they want to go home and make. It's really like, it goes on and on. What I'm trying to say is like whatever you're open to experiencing, that might be the extent of what you can take from these things, just with anything in life.
We were going to discuss Burning Man, but just to bring up Burning Man, because it's a giant festival, you get people going there for all kinds of reasons, to do all kinds of things. I've heard it described more as just a city, and cities, people do a million things in cities. They make a living, they go with tourists, or they're students, and it's kind of the same thing in a city like Black Rock City, where it's just a huge gathering of people.
I mean, I would say Burning Man, I don't personally define Burning Man as a festival.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people who identify as burners or have gone to Burning Man and gone to festivals might agree with that. But when I say that, it's like, it's not just about like the roots of Burning Man and historically, like, how that thing sprouted out of the desert. It's more to do about how it seeps and how the tendrils of that event, they just kind of grow into every other area of your life. A lot of festival culture, especially in the West, on the West Coast, it's kind of like guided a direction. But more than anything, I'd say Burning Man is a global cultural movement. And what I mean by that is there's kind of like a new paradigm when you go to this event. It's like the spirit of like the 10 principles. Are you familiar with like the 10 principles of Burning Man?
No, I'm not.
They're kind of like the pillars that hold sort of like a utopian ideology that keeps everything pretty fluid and pretty smooth for the most part. But basically, the 10 principles of Burning Man are, there's radical self-expression, which is like, I mean, I can get into them individually if you want me to, but there's decommodification, gifting, which is, I think, one of the big ones. And then there's, leaving no trace, radical participation, and like inclusion, like it's just a highly inclusive place, immediacy, self-reliance, like a sense of civic responsibility, and communal, basically communal effort. And like with all of those things, like those are, each festival basically when it's created, there's like specific pillars or principles nowadays. And I think the big part of that is thanks to this, I don't know like where these principles came from or who even coined them or defined them for the community at large. And I'm not even saying that, my experience at Burning Man, I did see examples of all these things. I tried to live up to them myself, but it's not even that everyone actually believes or follows all of these things either. But with them intact, they've steered the language and the action towards something which looks like utopia, and it exists outside of the normal confines of what a lot of burners call the default world.
Those are not exactly tenets of normal civilization, or what we could tentatively call normal civilian world, shall we say. Normalcy
is also fluid. I think the first burn ever was on a beach, it's like Baker Beach outside of San Francisco in 1986.
Yeah.
That's not even, like, the origin goes beyond that. There's this one artist named Mary Grauberger, I think that's how you pronounce her name. She'd basically collect like driftwood and stuff off the beach, make these sculptures and burn them. And then in 86, Larry Harvey and this guy Jerry James got together and built the first effigy, which burned. But like since then, that was like 30 some people gathering on the beach annually around summer solstice. Since then, it's like, I don't know, what is the population of Burning Man now? I know it's shifting always. But
man, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean it's
10,000 more.
oh my god, no, dude, it's I would say closer and beyond 100, at least 70 the year that I went.
Okay.
10,000 is like not. It's funny, like at some of these festivals, because festival culture has gotten so big, that's not even a lot of people to me anymore. It's just kind of scary.
Damn. In 100,000 people, that's a big fucking small town. That's like what I was saying about it being a city. Like, I did not know it was that much of a city. Like, that is a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a city. I mean, it's Black Rock City. It is. I think I'm pretty sure. I think there might be one other example that might actually outdo it, but it's the example of the largest temporary city on the planet. And if you go there, like, it is amazing that the diversity of cultures, beliefs, I mean, even the diversity of, like, economic backgrounds and this and that, like, you know, there's a sense that it's like harmony in a weird way. It's like if you ever go to India and you, like, you know, are on the streets and all the cars, it looks like complete chaos. You know, all the movement of the cars and the cattle and the people, it's just chaos, but there's like a rhythm to it. And there's this rhythm on the playa that, like, I remember my first night ever, I climbed up to the top of this tower in the camps, and I overlooked the sea of lights and action and pillars of fire blasting into the sky. And, you know, sounds of all types coming from every direction. It was this, you know, sensory overload, absolutely overloaded. And I was trying to just sit there and soak it all in, and it just looked like complete and utter chaos. And, you know, it wasn't very long, like, before hopping on my bike throughout the week and, like, just jumping right into it, that I realized there's this beautiful flow to it and this beautiful harmony and rhythm to it all. And I really believe that it's those 10 principles that maintain the ability for people to actually experience that and, like, continue to add on top of that. Like, I really think that those values, it's like shared community values, that's what drives this, I don't know, this sense of freedom, which is something that I think, like, festival goers ultimately aspire to. It's like freedom. There's this sense of freedom and this like synchronicity around that it just gets birthed from from these events and from these gatherings. But I think a lot of it has to do with collective intention and community values.
That makes sense given how conformative society has gotten in greater, and by that I mean like if you were to walk down any given street, there are behavioral norms, there's sort of like what definitions are of someone's life, and it's almost like because that is so tight that festivals like these will appeal to people just because they don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, it's beyond just, like, you know, this rebellion against what the norms are. It's like shifting the conversation, and it's actually shifting what is considered the norm.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and it's very distinct, you know, what the norm is out there and what you do with your time and energy and how you get a job and how you find a partner and you settle down. It's like the classic, you know, American dream story. And I feel in my life now, that's not the norm. That's so far from the norm. Because, you know, I've experienced a certain opening to other realities of, like, how to exist in what I consider a more functional, sustainable, healthy world, or healthy, like, you know, community. That a lot of that old story for me, and not saying that it's like that it's bad or that my way or my beliefs are any better at all, because they're not. You know, it's different for everybody, but my sense of what normalcy is has shifted dramatically. And I think with transformational festivals, you know, that have been kind of either born literally from the ashes of Burning Man, or, you know, have been inspired by, I don't know, collections even longer than that. Like, I mean, we could get into, like, you know, festival culture if we want to, but, like, a transformational festival, it's not only about the personal transformation that's happening in the individual going and having these experiences, like, simultaneously, there's a reflection in the collective transformation. Like, when you go and you have these experiences and the shifts in your consciousness or your values or the strengthening of those things that happens, that's happening on an individual level as well as a collective level, because everybody else there, or most people there, are having a similar like breaking of bubbles and like, you know, realizations and insights. And when that's happening at that collective level, then that breaks through the confines of a festival ground and the gates of a festival ground. That gets brought back into what burners call the default world. That's in business practices, like the whole like sharing economy. Like that's something I see more businesses developing. I mean, there's so much that is informed by, like, in our world, from these very fertile grounds for people to seed new ideas, new ways of being and relating to one another.
Yeah, I mean, it's well known that some very famous tech executives go to Burning Man, and I know that there are lots of people, I mean, quote unquote, of note that go to festivals and are part of festival culture. I know that you have a belief that Burning Man wasn't the start of festivals, which I think is completely valid, and I wanted to bring that up in the context of the Summer of Love movement and sort of the hippies. Would you make any comparison between transformational festivals and sort of what was happening in Golden Gate Park in the 60s?
From the outside and the contrast of a lot of other quote-unquote normal culture, I don't think festivals, these transformational festivals, are as revolutionary as a lot of people believe. I think it's more natural, actually. I think it's just something, an element that's like shifting in our human nature naturally, just given the circumstances of the world right now. I mean, festivals go all the way back. They've been around for thousands of years. Like, some are religious, some are celebrating seasonal change, other just like historical events, like, you know, battles or this or that. And most of them, I would imagine for the most part, are celebrated annually. But like even in the Philippines, every single day on the calendar is like designated for a specific religious festival. So it's like, you know, festivals, people gathering together to celebrate, you know, whether it's a harvest or a deity or yada, yada, yada. Like, this has been around. This is part of our human evolution, like these gatherings and like why we do that. Of course you can relate in the United States, like, you know, the whole Summer of Love and that movement to what's happening now. I guess I haven't really done too much comparison there because I think they're also drastically different.
Sure.
Like what might be a common reflection is that people are fed up with the state of current political or ecological affairs, religious organizations or this or that. And I feel like in the Summer of Love there was a turn away from what the, you know, the plate of food that was given to people as like, oh, this is your reality. This is what you have to like subscribe to. This is what you have to choke on down. You know, people looked for an alternative way of being. And, you know, the things that plague us, that plague our world, whether it's war, famine, or ecological disaster, this is very real today as it was in certain parts of the world back then. So I feel a lot of festival culture, of course, can be still a reflection of that, like, turn away from being a part of the problem. And people are looking to be part of the solution. I'm not saying that everyone is got that same intention. Some people just like to go and have a good time and blow off some steam and stress, you know, and all power to them if that's what it is. But it's so much more. Like, these events are training grounds more than anything. It's like school. I mentioned it being a fertile ground. It is, to me, I mean, it's been one of the most fertile grounds for building my mycelial network of human connection than any other outlet that I've been really able to experience yet. And especially with all my movement as well, and watching other people like gather these same insights at the same time, or like having other people who, you know, get to, I don't know, lead the way with a little bit more insight, and share new ideas. Like, you know, that's not very different than the Summer Love.
Yeah, on that note, you are in the production side of festivals usually. Yeah. So do you feel like you enable people to like kind of open their minds?
I'm a space creator. I try not to dictate or guide people's experiences at these events.
Sure.
I'm in the production side, but what that means is different for every festival that I work. Partly because there's different needs at every single day, with every single different project, with every single different festival. There's different needs required of me, or of the group. So what I do at production is basically I ask the question, where am I needed right now within the project that I'm working on or invited to work on, and then like how can I best like give my energy in an effective and efficient way to help bring that vision to life. And so it's taking myself out of myself and joining this, like, I guess this, trying to bring a collective principle to life. And then so that's basically and mostly space creation. So when people are coming to these festivals, I'm just creating a stage for people to play, or I'm creating a space for people to listen, or I'm creating a space for people to dance, or I'm creating a space for people to learn, or I'm creating a space. I just like the space creation and being behind the scenes of it, and I take more so than even like going as a participant to festivals myself, because I don't really do that anymore, and I actually haven't done that in a long time. I take more joy, more satisfaction, more inspiration by helping co-create just the installations and the things that you see and experience there.
You're responsible for the background for experiences?
I mean, that's relative in a large way, yeah, but I would say I'm part of building the skeletal structure of this giant corporeal being that we call a festival. And some of the people that do that work with me are some of the most incredible, most talented human beings I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And in some ways even very self-sacrificing, which is, just with time and energy and the type of life that's required to go from festival to festival as well. It takes quite a lot. But that doesn't mean that it ends right there and we're creating these events. Like, it's the event to me is the success of an event is marked by the participation and the experience of the participant coming, buying a ticket or whatever, coming in there, because like I just set up the scalar structure. I'm as much a part of the heart of that corporeal being as every single other human there. I'm as much a part of the functions, the organs, and everything that's a part of making that creature dance in one big collective form is, that it takes a village. I don't know who said this or where I read this, but it takes a village to build a village. So yeah, I work in production.
And just for people to kind of know, roughly how many festivals have you been involved in production with?
I would say probably not that many compared to some people, that's for sure. I would say between 12 to 16 in my life. Mm-hmm. And, production is a lot of things. Like, I could be build lead, leading a project of 13 people, designing and building an installation for the festival at one festival, and then I can be bar backing or, directing cars to park in parking spots at the next one. The role shifts dramatically, and it's kind of exciting too. It keeps it fresh, and it allows me to, draw from my kind of jack of all trades nature, draw from a very vast resource of interest and talents and this and that, which I think the generalist really thrives at festival production. At least that's what I've noticed with a lot of my friends who are also in that world. Very generalist attitude towards life.
So, James, what was the first festival you attended?
The first festival I attended was not the thing that drew me into festival culture.
Gotcha.
I would say the first festival I attended was back when I was 2007, I think, but it was Bonnaroo in Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
And that was the first. I believe that was the first year that MTV actually bought out that festival, and I just had no idea what the hell was going on. For the most part. it was pretty cool. It was fun, for being a baby and like just really being really young. It was an interesting event, but a far cry from the festival experiences that I'm a part of nowadays. I didn't leave that great of a taste in my mouth, honestly. But 2 years later, my friend invited me to go to a festival in Michigan called Rothbury, and it actually turned out to be the last year for that festival. The Dead were playing with Two Bob Crew, String Cheese Incident for all you music fans out there, for jam band fans. And the jam band culture, like, that was all new to me as well. Like, I never listened to a full Grateful Dead song in my entire life. Couldn't stand that music. And then, like, something happened on the dance floor where I looked around me at one point, and I looked around and I just see children, like, 4 years old to people in their 90s, and everyone is getting down, dancing like it was like the last hour of their life to celebrate all of human existence. And it was just the most beautiful gathering, just seeing the harmony between all the creatures a part of that. And no matter what the age or creed or this or that, everyone was just one collective fabric, one big old Grateful Dead tapestry. And then so something clicked, and the rest of that weekend like really began to click more and more for me. And wow, yeah, that was kind of like the seeds were planted for it. That collective feeling of love, all the synchronicities around me, and the perfection, even in the chaos of it all. Just to see, like, I don't know, just little things too. Like, if somebody needed help, like, it wasn't a question. No one needed to ask for help, really. It was like the community was there just to support. And, it just represented a new way of being that I never witnessed before in my entire life, other than like in my own family dynamics. And even then, kind of hard to come by. So I was like, wow, I discovered something here. And then that basically set the foundation for me to do deeper exploration with that world and with that community. And I mean, I could go on for hours about everything that's brought me to where I am now. That'll be in my book I write one day.
How would you see drugs playing into festival culture? Because it's certainly not simple.
It's definitely not simple. There's a lot of complexity to it, and I'll begin just by saying this. You don't need drugs to have an amazing transformational time at these events, period. You don't. You absolutely don't. Well, no. What I'm saying is you can. You absolutely can. But you don't. It is not a prerequisite to experiencing all the joy of those principles and those community values. It's not something that is required. And this is where, there's a lot of people. There are a lot of drugs at a lot of festivals. I don't go to music festivals more mass-produced music festivals, and I don't work at those things mainly because the main drug I see there is alcohol. And there's a dependency on alcohol there. And that one specifically, I think, is the most dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I am not hating. I like a good mead every now and then. Sometimes I like a good whiskey. But, alcohol, when you're trying to build these containers, it shifts the conversation, the attention, the whole energy of a gathering quite dramatically. So I think when we think about these events, it's kind of are there even drugs there? What kind of drugs are people doing? Why are people doing drugs? Under what context are we even calling these things drugs? And then we have to get into the historical context of drugs in this country and the greater culture. It's it's pretty fucking ass backwards. And I say that with 100% confidence. Fortunately, there's a shift in that happening right now. If you're familiar with the MAPS conference, they've, even with some states that are legalizing marijuana, or cannabis, there's finally scientific studies are legally supported. Like we can start doing real scientific studies on what these substances are and how they affect our minds, our bodies, and our communal fabric. And it's absolutely one of the greatest things, I think, because like we haven't been legally allowed to study these things. So like our country has just fallen underneath the stoop of alcoholism, and it's just amazing because that is our national caffeine and alcohol. Those are our national drugs. Those are the ones in terms of paradigm shift, like there is a focus with hallucinogenics at these festivals when you do see it. And partly and we're still understanding, the real effect that has. But I think it comes down to our culture lacking a rite of passage. We have in the United States, I mean, this is just my belief, there's really not much that constitutes a rite of passage for men and women. Biologically, women have, a more of a rite of passage than men do. Sure. But with men, that's why we have a society of little boys, especially little boys running this country. And I think like festivals provide an environment for a rite of passage to happen. Collective group of people learning and sharing and evolving together. That's a rite of passage right there. Psychoactive illicit substances, they have definitely impacted and driven the festival culture, without a doubt. Anyone who would disagree with that, I think, is refusing to face a reality. At the same time, though, these are tools, and these aren't prerequisites, these aren't necessities. I've been to plenty of events where there are no drugs, at least not even visible. Like, it's not an intention of the collective to partake in these things, and the experience is just as valid. But, I mean, just to kind of like wrap it up, the art, the music, the inspiration at and around every corner, like the high quality and high density of social and creative interactions, like a lot of that can be contributed to the psychonauts and to the people who question their reality and aren't afraid to look outside the box of what they've been given as, their sense of reality. And I think it's a journey for those people, especially at festivals, to come back around and to, I think you can get lost with the substance abuse as well. Not to be preachy at all. I appreciate the presence of a lot of these medicines at festivals. However, it's like, take what you need and leave the rest. That's the one golden rule that, I apply myself in these situations, and I would urge everyone to apply as well. There's so much more than the tool, and so much more that we can, experience without the dependency on these things. As soon as there's a dependency to have a transformative experience at a festival with drugs or with LSD or mushrooms or whatever, it's like, then that's a good time to, in my opinion, break away from those things if you still want to be a part of that culture and really experience it. Or, do you. Don't give a fuck. Whatever. But like for transformational experiences, we're trying, the intention, I believe, is that we're trying to create a collective shift. And I'm grateful for these tools and these allies to help be catalysts for that. But that's not the end game. That's not the sustainable model to me. So that's just my belief.
You mentioned before when we were talking that the legalization of marijuana, like that is a giant shift that's happening right now. And you mentioned that the legalization of weed may have a big effect on festivals in the sense of festival goers.
It's not just goers, but I would say production. I mean, honestly, the legalization of weed is going to have an effect on so much economically and socially in this country. Like, these festivals can't pay a lot of money to a lot of most of the people are volunteers who put these things together. And it's like, when we're building this dream and we're trying to bring it to life, like, a lot of times the investment just isn't there. It's like we've gotten a lot of support from the weed industry as it's been in California and Oregon and wherever. So it's like, for a lot of people in production, trimming weed, I think, provides a lot of supplementary income for them to follow their dreams. Yeah, working in the cannabis industry, it can be very profitable in a very short time. Like with trimming, for example, and some people will work like a trim season for a couple months, sometimes even just a month, and they'll have all the resources they need to get them through the rest of the year. And it's like that, I feel like, for a lot of my community has been a resource to get us to go from festival to festival, or to put expend more energy into these events. So it's really interesting to see how when it's being legalized, it's not necessarily profitable anymore. That profit margin is shifting very rapidly. The way is pretty much being paved for corporate control of the entire industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge, though, at the same time. As weed's legalized, maybe there's not as much money for people to go and chase these dreams. It's not just in the festival world. Like, there's going to be entire communities that turn into desert towns.
Oh yeah.
Entire businesses that just, go under real quick. I would say what's going to happen is you're going to have a screen, or this is an invitation for many of us to step up into our passions and into our dreams and into those things that we really want to cultivate in this life, and trust that we can actually, make a sustainable lifestyle for ourselves. And the festival grounds, like the counterculture, like the different ways of being that we learn about, like the sharing economy, or like, conscious community, like, there's so many forms of communication and just like, communal structure that we're practicing in these environments. Like, we can't like depend financially on this one economic institution to support us. Then that invites us to actually explore a lot of these other paradigms of existing that we've learned about at these events.
Kind of diversify into what you've learned.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's like it could be a very positive thing for actually strengthening the values behind these events. But it's also going to be a huge challenge. There's going to be growing pains. People are going to need to learn new ways of making it work, so to say. But again, like looking back at these events that we would do this for, like I really believe that it's like now it's time to, what's the saying? Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So put your energy where your needs are. We've been learning all these different ways of existing together, working together in communal effort. So hopefully that there's just even stronger communal projects and, things that are born out of this seeming struggle.
For people listening that aren't on the West Coast or aren't familiar with the concept of trimming, basically a skilled trimmer can earn hundreds of dollars a day. And it's a very West Coast sort of job, but it does support a lot of people. Not only in the crowd we're talking about, just like a lot of people.
I mean, you'd probably be surprised the amount of businesses that are, in some way supported by that industry in one way or another. And I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see where it goes from here on all ends, but
okay, so we're talking about the future, but in between your first festival and this future, you've done a lot of stuff. You've been a lot of places. Just for an example, like I sent you a text a while ago asking which festivals you've worked at, and you like immediately responded with a pretty long list. So I went on Google Earth and I mapped those, and it's mostly in Anglo-America, but there's like a huge range. You were in like Quebec to Tennessee to Oregon and Costa Rica, which we'll talk about, and that was just like off the top of your head.
And all over California.
and California.
That's where most of it is based out of.
Would you consider that sort of the capital of festival culture?
I would say, it doesn't, I don't know where it really begins. You have to go back into the history of rave culture, I think, to really get to why this is the case. But I mean, maybe it's the proximity to Burning Man, to, and like a lot of the people where they're from, that go out to Black Rock City. Maybe it's supported by the presence of the Silicon Valley, or maybe it's just like the history of San Francisco and like, the cultural renaissance that happened there in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
And onward. I would say, the Bay Area is clearly, to me, like the capital for, transformational festival culture, because it permeates throughout more than just the festivals. It's in the cafes, it's on the streets, it's in the homes and hearts of so many people out there. And that might be changing very rapidly as well. But like that's kind of where it's been. I'm from Philadelphia, and then like there's like the Philadelphia arts. Something is the Philly arts, and everything is like kind of sectioned off. I feel like the arts community, and that's changing too, but it's like I go to see a show, boom, it's just the show. I want to go see a gallery, the art is just in the gallery. There's the mural arts program, which extends out to the streets.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's a huge mural culture in Philadelphia.
Thousands and thousands of murals, which is one of the coolest thing in the world. But I think like that's the closest thing that I can say resembles parts of San Fran. And the Bay Area is like the art just spills out into the streets. It's everywhere. It's in the intentions of the doorknob on the bathroom. It's like it's not sectioned off. It permeates everything. It's an integral part of so much. And again, that's changing as the nature of life and just what it is to exist in this country is changing.
Yeah.
But that's another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the Bay Area, California, for whatever reason, when rave culture found the West Coast, I think that, sparked a lot. And I think Burning Man helped define a little bit more this community where, I don't know, there's plenty of subcultures within the form of festival culture, but, I feel like Burning Man really helped set more of a standard for what those values are within those subcultures, and a freedom and an inclusiveness to all of them as well. Festival culture, simultaneously, while it includes so many subcultures and it's an invitation, it's like the people who can afford to go to these things a lot of times like are privileged. We're privileged to be able to experience these things. It's privileged just to live on the West Coast. And a lot of these events, it's like predominantly white people with money in some capacity, or white people who don't have money who spend all their money on festivals. And I think that's a lot of my experience. A lot of people would have other experiences. That is not, I'm not trying to speak in generalizations, but that's one point of contention that I've heard from a lot of people who don't like festivals.
I was thinking a while ago that if you were going to put a Black Lives Matter poster anywhere where it would like hit at white millennials, like you would do it on the way to festivals. But then I put that on Facebook and it got kind of a backlash. Like it's a very sensitive topic, but I do think that the point you're making of the demographic is worth making.
Well, what was, if I can ask you, what was the backlash that you received for that?
Just people saying that it wasn't about that, and then that sort of gained steam, so that was kind of the response. And I have some friends that are people of color that attend Burning Man every year, and they were kind of like on my shit. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's, the roots of Burning Man are anarchist. you know?
I mean, there used to be guns and dogs all over the place there.
I mean, beyond that, way more than that, I would say at a lot of festivals, it's like supposed to be a safe space for speech and values and beliefs of all types, as long as they're not like, endangering anybody else. But yeah, I mean, it stands to say that there is privilege in living in the West. There's privilege living on the West Coast in the West. There's privilege like having enough money and enough time to experience one of these festivals. And I'm sure that me driving home with my dusty Burning Man vehicle is like, that's going to be an invitation to get pulled over. But it's not the same as like driving while black anywhere in the fucking country, which is an invitation to get pulled over in most of these states. So it's like, I can't really say that festival goers are not privileged as fuck. Of course we are. Absolutely. If you're denying that you have privilege, like that's pretty ridiculous, and pretty that doesn't really help anybody or anything. But it's like recognizing, being 100% aware that you have this privilege. Like, then I feel the decisions that you make within these containers can be more informed towards more inclusive behaviors and actions and healthier choices within those spaces as well. There's people who would die to come to some of these events and experience some of the capacity of what these things have to offer. I mean, there are many universities as well. It's like, take advantage, go to a fucking workshop, go learn something that you haven't learned before.
Yeah.
Like, go talk to a stranger, go try a new food, go
have a new experience.
Go have a new experience and take that back, what you learn, and bring that to the rest of your community and bring that to the rest of the world, and try to build structures that are more inclusive, to less privileged people or whatever. Share the values and all of that with people who don't have the privilege to be there.
Burning Man is close to Reno, but for people that don't know California geography, like, that's pretty much in a direct line, Reno, Sacramento, Bay Area. And that's where, as we talked about, San Francisco, Baker Beach is where the original man was burned. And lots of people that go to Burning Man are from the Bay Area. I mean, it's the most convenient for those people. I know several of them. And I was wondering, James, if you noticed there's some festivals, like there was one in Atlanta. Like, was that one different demographically than, say, Burning Man? Like, obviously it reflects Atlanta more than the Bay Area. So did you notice a difference in that?
Well, I mean, obviously wherever you go regionally, there's going to be more people from that region. That's just the nature of people heading off work, or, festival goers just having a closer proximity and more capacity to actually attend these events.
Yeah.
That's obvious. I would say within the transformational festival culture, there might be like small cultural shifts here and there, but ultimately I think there's this like foundation that is like the same throughout all of it. And it's the sense of oneness that we're all trying to experience and work towards within ourselves and within our communities. I mean, of course, I feel that like the more festivals I've worked, the larger my network and my community's been, or it's gotten, and I travel a lot with the same people because the project that I'm a part of, like we bring to different parts of the country. But yeah, it's kind of like we all have teleportation skills. Actually, I should say it like this. A lot of times festivals, it kind of feels like the festival life can be such a dream with all the synchronicities and just all the magic and the depth of experience that we have at these things. And sometimes when a festival ends, it feels like the dream's over. And then I go to the next one, and then it's like waking right back up in the same exact dream. The same, it might be a different nature setting. It might be like different setting outside of the grounds, different food, different this and that. But ultimately, the heart of it is the same.
But you feel like it's the same crowd sort of with different faces.
It's the same values, the same like core values, which are like creating a new paradigm for us to bring into this world. And I know those words get transformational festival and conscious this and conscious that and new paradigm. These are new age terms that are overused so often, but it's also something that like a lot of people's actions are lining up with more and more, whether they're business owners, with more ethical business practices, whether they're just conversations happening, like the type of conversations that we're seeing at these events, from the reality of circumcision and male, genital mutilation to like what adaptogenic herbs can you bring into your diet to like make your life like it's like the conversations, the diversity of those are endless, and they're growing and evolving, and we're all learning together and bringing these conversations back to our communities. So yeah, the heart of it's all the same. It's expansion, and it's love, and it's community.
People talk trash about these things, about festivals, but we would never do that about, like, say, a church event or the pilgrimage to Mecca, no one is going to talk crap about that because it's a religious thing. So the article I read, it was noted the decline of religion, of sort of like practiced religion in the West, and then there's a religious aspect to a transformational festival. And like, I feel like if people knew that, they would give them more respect. Do you think that's actually like a valid comparison?
So, a comparison between festival culture and religious culture?
Not necessarily like hardcore religion, but
Yeah.
spirituality and sort of like connecting with something outside of yourself.
Yeah, spirituality and religion are two different things.
Sure.
Spirituality I mean, everyone's spiritual practice is their own, and their connection with the divine, or whatever you want to call it, God, or yada yada yada. Like, that is everyone's own.
Yeah.
And religion is, like, of course, more organized ideas of what that is supposed to be, or what that is, or it gives people, it's like a processing system on a computer. So this is how you process your spiritual experience. I think if there's to claim that festival culture is replacing more religious practice, I got that right?
That's the theory.
Then I would say, fuck yeah, of course it is. Like, without a doubt. I mean, I'll start with this. It's like festivals, a lot of them have adopted practices of ritual from modern paganism. It's like, if you go to a lot of these transformational festivals, there's altars, there's opening and closing circles and ceremonies, there's invocations, there's like the sacred fire, which is usually my favorite thing. There's reference and admiration of the goddess in a myriad of forms. Like, there's a lot of symbology that's taken from different spiritual traditions, backgrounds, whether they're nature traditions. I think the presence of these things and the diversity of these things, it's like this universal church, that no matter how you practice your spirituality, no matter what your connection is to the divine and the expression of that is, there's space and support for you to do it there. There's no one telling you that's wrong, you can't do that, you won't find God that way, you'll find hell that way. There's nothing like coming down, as long as it's not like hurting anybody, or demeaning anybody, or dehumanizing anybody. It's like all devotion is welcome, and it looks different through everything. But I will say, regardless of like, the altars and this and that, the one consistent form of devotion that I see in festivals is ecstatic movement. And it's like, at transformational festivals, like, music is more than entertainment, and especially when a dance floor is a co-creative habitat, as it's guiding one into participation. Freedom of expression with a foundation of healthy community values, that's a pretty, like, collectively liberating experience. And, like, if you actually even look back, it's like ecstatic movement, song, prayer. This is the root of a lot of shamanic practice. So reaching trance states through this limitless expression. Like, religions, maybe not all of them, but I'd say a fair amount of them seem to incorporate some part of this nature into their devotional practice.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, like, the real worship is it's through the music and through the movement, and it's the conversation, it's that liminal space between those things, and the expressions that are brought forth from there. And, like, that's, for me personally, I can really only speak from my own personal experience, like, that's the closest to God I've ever gotten, is on a dance floor. And I'm sure a lot of people would agree, and a lot of us who are at these events, like, regardless of your belief system, or how eccentric those beliefs are, or how normal they are, I think a lot of people would agree with me that experience of divinity through movement is, I mean, I haven't seen anything that parallels it. There's a state of grace achieved, and this, like, profound clarity and peace. And when you've danced all night well into dawn, like, a lot of formal structures of behavior are just broken down. And, like, my legs and my feet, my back and body could just be, like, sore and tired, and I don't know, like there's in some sense emotional and physical pain are met through that process, and even if in a moment they're transcended. So there's like it's the liberation through movement and the liberation through music. Like that for me is where the divinity is. And I think hell, like I've been to a lot of churches. I was raised Catholic. I've never understood my nature, my spiritual connection. Nothing comes close to what I've experienced just through music and through dance. Like no church or steeple or dogma or set of rules or this or that is ever going to bring me closer personally. And again, to each their own.
Yeah. So James, at these festivals, are you working with a specific crew?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple crews, but I work with the Gnome. So the Gnome is a benefit corporation. For the most part, we're a collective of herbalists, educators, artists, builders, permaculturists, and just generally overall plant enthusiasts.
Gotcha.
Our vision is to bring more conversation to our communities about conscious consumption, and that's generally through the production of an elixir bar, or apothecaries, tea houses, educational workshops, and dinners that are focused on specific plants and their bioregions. And
from different parts of the world, like
with the dinners we'll have, like, let's say we had one last couple months ago where mushrooms was the focus. So there were a couple of meals, or all the courses were based off of different mushroom ingredients, and we had beforehand, before the dinner, like a cocktail hour where we had like herbal elixirs served and tonics, and then we had an actual like hour and a half workshop beforehand with a specialist teaching us all about mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, and cordyceps mushrooms, and his projects working at his cordyceps lab. So anyway, it's an educational opportunity wrapped up into these amazing dinners held in beautiful spaces, and everything that we source we try to make from that region. But yeah, the list goes on generally for all the things that we implement. I would say, talking about our mission, we like to, provide alternatives and enhancements to people's experiences in an event setting. The idea is just to meet attendees wherever they're at. And through that, we study traditional production methods for our products, for our menus. We try to source plants and ingredients from the regions we're visiting and serving at. And it's probably vital to mention that all the ingredients that we use are ethically harvested and ethically grown and ethically sourced. So we try to keep those values at the core of what we're building.
So it's the good stuff, essentially.
Yeah, so basically, whether it's through the bar, the apothecary, or any of our services, we're trying to provide an integrative approach to spreading information in plant medicine. That's the crew that I've worked with the most. And then every year we go down to the jungles of Costa Rica to Envision, and that's a festival down there on the Pacific, outside of Dominical and Ovita, and that's to work in collaboration with and as the village witches.
Okay.
So like our vision with the Gnome is a really nice mirror to the mission of the witches. Like it's focused more on global health and well-being. There's definitely a focus on environmentalism, plant conservation, and there's just like a lot of educational opportunities. The Healers Collective, like we have the Elixir Bar and the Apothecary there, and my tea house there. We've got muralists, lots of art. We've got consultations. We've got the Healers Collective, which is pretty cool there, there's multiple holistic approaches from massage and Reiki and Ayurvedic consultation to energy work and acupuncture, Akashic record readings and tarot readings and yada, yada, yada. So it's like that's another aspect that's added on there in Costa Rica. And then there's educational workshops all day, every day at our stage. And I think one of the most amazing parts about that production is the herbal first aid clinic, which, usually you go to these events, there's a first aid clinic in case anything happens, if you get sick, if you, hurt your ankle or whatever. And there at, next to the first aid clinic, we've got the herbal first aid clinic, which Sarah Wu, who started the Village Witches, and her teacher, Seven Song. He's a man who runs a herbal school of medicine up in Ithaca, New York. They do just they teach a lot of people working with them about how to provide first aid. But I mean, I lived there at Envision. I'm kind of prone to getting hurt and getting sick and hurting my ankle, it turns out. So the herbal first aid clinic it's just my favorite thing at Envision, hands down.
Yeah, I remember you telling me a story where you got sick at Envision, yeah. So.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it's 104-degree fever.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
I mean, that was my first time in the jungle. I didn't really know what to do, what not to do. But, you know, no one could figure out what the hell is wrong with me. Like, I was dizzy, I was, like, you know, vomiting here, I had diarrhea, I had all these things, and they were, like, classic signs of dengue fever, but, like, I wasn't exhibiting all the same signs as dengue, so it was just really confusing, and I basically spent 8 hours in the herbal first aid clinic tent, where they're just, like, you know, it's basically beautiful women giving me herbs, different drinks as I'm, like, you know, hallucinating from sickness in the back. And then, yeah, I don't know, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And then Sarah Wu, who started it, Village Witches, came over, just like, I think I remember her, like, looking at my tongue and looking at my eyes, and then she just went into her little personal first aid kit, whipped together this little concoction, which was mostly plantain leaf, and then, to my memory, and then, I don't know, you know, what that did, but within a couple hours the fever broke, and, you know, I wasn't gonna die, which was nice. But that kind of set me on the path with working with this group for the next few years. I was like, because I was like, before I was really into a lot of herbalism, you know, I played around with certain plants, and, you know, I work with Camellia sinensis quite a bit, and I have for 5 years now, and that just shifted something, and I, you know, got my life saved by this amazing witch. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm in your service, let's spread herbs to the people. So, you know, it's been really amazing. I'm really humbled to work with these people and to be around the wisdom of the plants and the knowledge that these humans carry about these plants, and seeing everyone's personal relationships with these plants, and then just like creating opportunities and portals for people to connect with these things is just, it's just a real gift to work with these folks.
So talking about Envision, Costa Rica is a ways from California and a ways from just most places. People know about Burning Man. What makes Envision sort of a special festival, like, that's worth the plane ticket?
You know, every festival is a special festival depending on who you ask and what people's personal experiences are there. Envision is pretty unique, at least to my experience. If you've been to the jungles of Costa Rica, I think you'll know what I mean. When it's just, there's an intensity there. It's like if you're in the desert, you know, the transmutation of energy is very slow. It's like it you know, cactuses hold and lose water, and it takes a long time for that to happen. You know, whether it's, you know, a rock slowly falling, making its way back to sand, or I don't know, just the life there, the living beings there, the creatures, like, just there's a slower pace. And then in the jungle, the transfer of energy and the transformation all around you is instant, and it's like, it's endless. It's like the vegetation, there's, you know, I mean, so much biodiversity in every single direction, just fruit, you know, dripping off of trees. You've got, you know, birds and monkeys and snakes and insects and all these things that are just such a myriad of color and vibrancy, and all of this stuff is just like the energy transfer is happening very quickly. So there's a vibe to that I think within the Envision Festival, it really like meshes well with, like, the energy, the music, the dancing, the yoga, the education, our elixir bar, all these things, like, and everything in between, and then some. Like, it all is such a wonderful expression of the vibrancy of the jungle, and it allows a space for people to really explore that pulse within themselves. And that could be really freeing, just to see people in that habitat And like I feel like for me personally, every time I go to Envision, the amount of emotional work that I do in just a couple of days is like, I mean, it's taken me months, and I think even years in some cases to do some of that work elsewhere. I don't know how to explain what that magic is. And that's, again, like that's sober at an event. Like, it's like, what the fuck?
I actually have been to Costa Rica, and I know what you're talking about. There's sort of I mean, it's the meeting point of two continents. And like, not only in a geographical sense, but like literally those continents were apart and then they joined. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, yeah, there's just this energy there that I can totally see lending itself to a festival.
Oh my God, yeah. And I don't know, man, like I think like just dance until dawn. Just dance until dawn, that's all I gotta say. And then going to the beach in the morning. But no, I mean, beyond that, like, Envision is very special, and what makes it special are the people who are putting it together and the people who come, and the integration with the world around it. Just, you know, with Costa Rican officials, the Ticos down there, and amazing collaboration from so many people. And I mean, people just bring their best selves into that environment. So I mean, I love it. I'll be going back for some time, I'm sure. I certainly hope.
Right, so before you said you've worked at like 12, 16 festivals, but did you mean more than once at those festivals?
Yeah, I mean, that's how many festivals I've worked. I mean, if I was to consider every festival by itself, like I said, I've been to almost double that. Like Envision, this will be my third year going this year. The ones that I really love and the ones that really stand out to me, which are kind of like, you know, they're the friends I'll keep forever, you know? Yeah. Like, it's about quality over quantity at this point in my life right now. So I really want to be part of, you know, festival environments that I see are sustainable, and the missions, you know, what we're trying to build, that needs to resonate with my values for me to continue to put energy into it. And I don't know, that just feels right to me. So yeah, Envision's one of those places. So Beloved and Imagine and Lucidity, like these are like my three favorites. Like they're very near and dear to me. And you know, whether I stay in festival production or not, you know, these are the gatherings that I'm going to continue to go to as I get older and grow with the communities there. You won't catch me dead in tie-dye though, Rylan. I
had a friend that wanted me to ask you a question, or a mutual friend. Mm-hmm. What is your favorite sort of magic spell? I think that's what he wanted me to ask.
My favorite magic spell? I mean, there's a couple out there. Oh, I don't know. I've got so many, man. Oh, you know what? I can narrow it down to two.
Okay.
I think. One of them is, and I mean, I might have expressed that I love to dance, but like being on that dance floor and just having highly intentional movements, like with the actual flow of what's coming through you, like through movement, like, you know, one can become a channel for so much. And like, it's like you don't know where your energy is coming from, but you can feel where it's coming from, and it's like this infinite source of it. And like being able to like express that through movement and share that, that's really fun. That's gotta probably be my favorite. And then just being able to like, you know, look at someone and light, as I'm lit up just like a fire, like light them up. Or if I'm, you know, tired or whatever, and someone else looks at me and smiles and dances with me, I'm like, ah, yeah. And it's just this fun, yeah, that's definitely a spell. But I'll say my favorite spell is the spell that one gets put under when I just pour a cup of tea for them after they've been dancing, or after they've been, you know, whatever they're dealing with in however excruciating emotional pain, or like glorious, like, you know, state of bliss they've just experienced. Like just someone coming to the tea table and just pouring a cup of tea in front of them, and everything before and everything in front just disappears. And it's amazing what a single cup of tea can do to get someone in the present moment. That's definitely my favorite spell, hands down.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, James. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's been nice rambling with you, Rylan. Thanks for throwing some Kindle into my my mental process.
For sure, man.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, you know, I'm just one expression of the festival scene. It's an infinite spectrum of colors and understandings and beliefs and experiences. So it's like, you know, me just sharing my views and my time at festivals and what I've taken from it. You know, it's just one piece of an infinite puzzle. If you've never been to a festival and you're interested in learning more about that culture, it's really the best thing to do is just experience it for yourself. Make your own judgments through experience. You know, whatever hang-ups or whatever judgments come up for you before having that experience or during that experience, it's part of the process of letting go of judgments and like getting to more clarity so we can really build a more harmonious future together. And I think ultimately that's what we're all trying to do, is just get back to our hearts. So, woo, festy life. I'll see you at the next Insane Clown Posse meeting, Rylan.
Sounds good.
Gathering, what do they call that?
I'll be the one in the most makeup.
Is it Gathering of the Juggalos?
I have no idea. That's a festival I'm not planning on attending.
Will ya catch me there, folks?
Thanks again to James Sauter for coming on. It's appreciated. My goal with this podcast was to expand people's understanding of a less than explored issue, and that tends to be the entire goal of the Other Past. So tune in again, check the description on how to support us, and check any links James has added, and throw the link around. Check out the other episodes. Just have a good day.